Welcome to The Week Ahead, a podcast by SBM Intelligence. I'm your host, Veronica Pana Igube. Every Friday, we explore stories that are shaping the African continent. Today is Biafra Memorial Day, which for a lot of Igbo people is a day that remembers the brutality of Nigerian civil war that ended 55 years ago. Earlier in the week, SBM Intelligence published a report on the impact of the secessionist sit-at-home protest that has been affecting southeast Nigeria, the Igbo heartland since 2021. Our studies found out the protest action has cost the region at least $4.8 billion in lost revenue. How has it come to this? Nigerian President Bola Tinubu has asked the National Assembly to approve over $21.5 billion in foreign loans for Nigeria's 2025-2026 budget. These loans will cover about 60% of the 2025 budget and are meant to create jobs, fix our budget gaps, and push reforms. Is borrowing this much a good idea for Nigeria's future? Niger has expelled some Chinese oil workers over rule violations and is pushing for more control of its resources, while in Guinea, the military government has cancelled 129 unused mineral permits, claiming that it wants to attract new investors. Meanwhile, the EU is investing 40 million euros to upgrade the Douala Njama trade route for better regional trade, and Togo has launched a 1.6 million credit line for women entrepreneurs. Experts say deep reforms are still needed. Are these moves sign of stronger governance or just short-term fixes in West and Central Africa? Salme Atiku joins us today for insights on these critical stories. Welcome, Samuel, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Great. Let's start with the Biafra Day. How have we come to this where we have seen um, there's this sit-at-home order, we have faced, we're seeing that it has made that region lose at least $4.8 billion in revenue. How have we come to this? And how is Nigeria treating the Igbos unfairly?
I think it's important to quickly mention that any form of agitation that result or resolve to the use of, I'll call it hate speech and violence, stand condemned. But regardless of that, I think it's important for us to look closely at this issue and dissect it. And I will try to make sense of it, maybe in six, seven broad points. I mean, drawing lessons from the past. The first point I will make is that the protest itself, right, was typically just mutating a one-day memorial, right? I mean, there are two different things altogether. You have a group of people that the Nigerian government actually did kill. The Nigerian government did man. They used a lot of scorched earth methods that globally had been condemned. And to date, no one had come to their senses, one, in recognizing that the actions we took during the Civil War were completely wrong. The children we killed were, I mean, the actions of the Nigerian government was terrible. That's not been there. I mean, we've not come to terms with that. That's one. And then on the flip side of things, also, what led to that civil war, the key lessons, the reflections has not been done. But we put that aside for now and go strictly to the sit-at-home order. Remember, this whole order actually this started, well, I think in 2017, if I'm right, around May 2017, about this time 2017. And the reason why it happened was because Nnamdi Kalu, right, was arrested, or I'll call it rearrested, and then that escalated beyond board. Now, Nnamdi Kalu as a person should actually be taken away from the conversation so that we can have a very rational conversation. One, just like you've highlighted, these issues had led to significant economic loss, not only for the people in the southeastern part of the country, but for the country at large. Meaning that one way or the other, the jobs that should have been created had not been created because of the escalation of these things, right? The tax that government should have collected have not been collected. The infrastructure that those money would have potentially fixed have not been fixed. And by extension, if you're fixing infrastructure, you create job, and then the cascading effect. So whether we like it or not, everybody in the country is affected. So this whole narrative that it's the people in the south that have been affected should be jettisoned. It's a national problem and it needs to be solved. That's number two. Number three, I will talk about the violence. And I love the report, the survey by SBN Intelligence that 82.5% of residents stay at home, but only 29% actually support the order. Well, when you put them on context, it means essentially if 82.6% of residents are actually adhering to non-state actors telling them what to do, but only 29% of them do support it. It clearly shows that the people in the South, the majority don't believe in the state at home. But they essentially do not trust the government to provide the security needed to protect them. And that's exactly why you see this compliance, this drive for so more importantly, I think it's important to also mention the IPOB and then the whole work around it itself. For instance, the factional leader like Samuel Akpa and then all those rogue. One way or the other, they've one way or the other kept this order alive. And nothing, I would say nothing, apart from the superficial front and back talk had been done to put these people to book, regardless of what people keep saying. Finally, the security, the security and then the repression circle, um, I will call it the security and the repression circle that hardened essentially the attitude of these people. We could go back in memory, look at 2016, 2017, when we had this Operation Python dance, right? That left scores and scores of people dead. Whether we like it or not, those are very, very militaristic. It doesn't solve proper. I mean, after the Operation Python done, have we had a relative peace? No, we've not had any relative peace. So my point is that our orientation in the country is not around security, but we always use this military, defense-based approach to security. I mean, we always substitute security for defense. Security itself is preventing crimes from happening. Defense is an action that you take. It could be actually be reactive, more reactive, to actually stem and then try to curtail a group of people. That's the approach we keep pushing when we think of security in Nigeria. AK-47, the police holding AK-47 and walking the street, taking whip and beating people up, as if the people in government are the lords, and then the citizenry are actually slaves. That mentality, we need to do away with it and begin to think more objectively. I will end by saying this. I mean, especially around the first part of the question, whether we like it or not, until we get into intense dialogue to put an end to the issues we have in the southeast, the southwest, the northeast, we will never solve any problem. No military might. The Nigerian military, how many are you? Maybe 300. I mean, if you have 300, you don't even have up to, I think, about 70,000 combatant military men. If you go to the UK, they don't have more than 70,000 military, right? If you look at the police and put them together, they can't even police Lagos. That's the truth. That's the sincere truth. We need to find a situation whereby people begin to live amicably together. And to get to that, a lot of dialogue will have to happen. I think that's at the heart of it. Now, the second part of the question you asked, that as the federal government responded to the Igbos' grievances and have they been fair? The truth is this: one, whether we like it or not, we've had one. I mean, I can talk about, look at Amnesty International report around the 2015-2016 crisis that gave birth to what we are still seeing today. About 150 people were extrajudicially killed in Nigeria, and nothing happened. The truth is that the families of those people, they will look at this government and smile that they are doing enough. That's not possible. You have to address that problem. You can't put the problem under the carpet. You have to address. That's number one. Number two, the concept of tagging any little agitation and rubbing group of people together. Oh, even if you look at IPOB itself, right? They were summarily, without, I'll call it without significant evidence. Of course, now people could say that they are evidence now. But at that time, they were making some noises online. And because of that, because they are a group of people, it leads to agitation. You summarily just tag them a terrorist organization. Essentially, President tomorrow or in 10 years' time can wake up and tag a political party a terrorist organization and not. The process of tagging an organization a terrorist organization needs to be clear, needs to be spelled out. So, and the court system needs to be involved. The National Assembly or what do you call it, the executive cannot just summarily, by fiat, declare an organization a terrorist organization. Everybody, remember, the Constitution of Nigeria, very, very clear around that, that you have rights to association. You could form association, and your association could be for anything you like. I always say that. The fact that the person next to you or your neighbor has set up an association maybe to promote something and you don't align it, it doesn't mean that you should fight the person. It means that that's the person's logic. That's what how the person thinks. It's for you to sit with the person and make the person see reason from your own side. And that's where the whole concept of dialogue. That has not happened in Nigeria. Number three, we have this prolonged legal dispute around the detention of even this person himself, this individual. The Nigerian government had made him. They have made him. I mean, historically, if you go and do survey around people's perception about him in 2017, many people don't know him. But the Nigerian government elevated the status to who he is today. And even despite the fact that in 2021, the Court of Appeal actually called his rendition illegal and the order that he should be released, the federal government, executive arm, had refused to align itself with those rules. Those are issues that are still there. More importantly, if we go straight into the infrastructure ledger of Nigeria, things around the second Niger bridge, those contextual issues around what are the federal presence within the southeastern region, they are question marks, and they are legitimate questions that people need to ask. It's not about this person is Igbo, this person. They are legitimate questions that people need to ask, and you have to sit on the table and address those issues. Five, they are limited political inclusion. How many ministers actually come from the southeast? How many states? Those are legitimate issues. I don't know. I know that there. I don't typically look at people as anchor of policy. But if you look at the budget of Nigeria, you try to discern it and look at programs of government and you see what is going on. Of course, you could raise question around whether in truth the southeastern region of the country, I'm not talking about now, I'm talking between 1960 and now, had been left behind. That's the truth. That's the honest truth. We need to address those issues. I will end by saying that whether we like it or not, also, the messaging that is coming out of the executive arm suggests that, oh, everybody in the Southeast are criminals. That anytime you say, oh, we are being neglected, it is criminality. That messaging, we need to pack it behind. And we need to step forward as a country. How do you step forward? We need to change our narrative to that of dialogue. You cannot be dialoguing. You cannot sit on a table and then you are having a conversation, constant conversation with people. And then the person goes behind your back and the person says, oh, they don't listen to me. That's not possible. The whole philosophy of public participation and democracy is by listening to people, telling those people how their opinion, their feedbacks have been used in your policy design and by extension, how you've implemented policy. And more importantly, until we get that right as a country, we'll continue to have those agitations. And those agitations will continue to grow. And unfortunately, a lot of people will continue to die. I wish that our politicians will take a lesson, sit down, reflect, take lessons from people and countries that have followed this path and put an end to this nonsense that we see.
I totally agree with you. I mean, in your response, you said in order for us to move forward, the Nigerian government has to have a dialogue, able to put these issues down and, table it. And, you mentioned like learning from other countries who have gone. I mean, Rwanda is one example of how they've been able to pass by that and move their country forward. I think that Nigeria also needs to learn the Nigerian government. But one other angle, I mean, you mentioned some of the things that Nigerian government needs to do, but you also mentioned that it's a national problem. And in order to address a national problem, the government can't do it alone as well. So you have Nigerians also playing a part and Igbos playing a part. So what part do you think? I know you had mentioned the part of government, but what part do you think we as Nigerians also need to play in ensuring that this dialogue and the healing process, and what parts do the Igbos have to play as well?
I would say the first thing is we need to shift from protest tactics that we've seen. And maybe, you know, when you talk about the Igbo communities themselves, how do they advance their goals, right? Maybe we need to shift away from the protest tactics, right? These evening vigils. Maybe we start doing evening vigils, right? We like vigils, right, in Nigeria. Maybe we go to churches and then we start praying. Maybe we adopt some concept that we see being happening. I mean, today Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, have been humbled, right? What happened? People start boycotting certain customer goods, right? Maybe people need to look at that. Maybe some bits of coordinated social media campaign will turn this table around. The truth is this, right? It is the government that been empowered, right? When you look at the constitution of the country, people had vested their powers on the executive arm and the legislative arm to address certain issues in the society. Now, regardless of the fact that you have handed those people your right, it doesn't mean those people become your voice. That is why you continue to dialogue with them. The orientation that we have in government is that once you have a representative in Abuja, even when it is INEC that select the person as against the will of the people, the person is representing you. That is wrong, meaning that you have to bring representative back home. Even in the United States, right, you see them having town halls, continue to dialogue with people. The first thing is that we need to go back to the basis. I remember when there was a disruption in France, and we use that as there was a global national debate in France. Where you remember when there was burning of things in France, there was a global national debate in France. People went to the community, they sat down, they had a conversation. Let's have a conversation first. So between the communities that are having these issues and the government itself, let's have that dialogue. The second thing is that I think we need to begin to shift our infrastructure, I'll call it our security infrastructure. It's completely wrong. You can't just bring in military, come into communities, kill people because you are looking for IPOB, you don't care, you kill pregnant women, you throw them away, and then you leave the community. That's wrong. We need a we need to redefine the protocol through which we police in Nigeria. We need to move away from this diverse military, raid them and kill them concept to a more community-based partnership. And that can only happen if the communities themselves and the government dialogue, which is important. Number three, we've had this stabilization fund flying around the Southwest Stabilization Fund, in the Southeast, everybody, somebody has been neglected in all of these things. That needs to be set up. You cannot have 6 regions in the country, why 5 regions enjoy the same benefit, and then you neglect a portion of the country, and then you feel you are happy. That's not going to happen. So even the disposition in how you message, the kind of messaging that come out of this thing, let's set up. Let's also create a Southeastern Stabilization Fund, right? Again, I'm putting that in context. I believe those things are acronyms. They are just conduits. They do nothing. But in terms of how you spread development, let it be evenly spread. Let the concept of equity begin to govern how you actually share resources. We need to leverage support, right? We need to actually begin to leverage the popularism. Remember, only 29% of people surveyed support being this sit at home. Majority of people in the South is opposite. People should remember that. But the question is that why are people complying? The reason why they are complying is because the security system has failed. The government itself need to admit that. How many? So instead of just robbing group of people together and declaring this thing, so those are things that I believe needs to happen. More importantly, I think engaging, we need to fix our, I think to be sincere, we need to fix our political election system. I don't want to use the word selection. I've not seen anybody talk heavily around there. I know there are some protests around electoral reforms. We need to reform our electoral systems. If we are going to begin to use biometric electronic voting, whereby one man, one vote, and that vote is begin to, and the concept of tallying vote, whereby you bring in a professor to do mathematics, needs to be jettisoned. I mean, it makes no sense. You don't need a professor to calculate total number of votes. That you don't need a calculator. At the polling unit, once the vote is there, let it go into the media center. And let's have a committees of media and everybody to do the mathematics ourselves. No one man cannot just sit down there, press calculator. If his calculator is faulty, or his calculator decide to remove two zeros from your vote, it is final. That's not going to happen. We need to have a committee and we have assessors. They look at it. Is this mathematics correct? Before you declare somebody winners. So those kind of political process need to be sanitized. If we could fix all those things, have a good dialogue, a public participatory mechanism, and then by extension we fix our political system, and then we ensure that there's equity in distribution of resources, and then we begin to improve the way we police our system. I believe together we can solve this problem within the next 5 years. You will see significant improvement in the way we live as people. We can't not continue to live like animals, killing ourselves, and then I mean, the fact is this: nobody elected when you are. I mean, we believe in God. I believe in God so much. But when you were a sperm, you did not tell God that, oh, I want to come in as an Igbo man, or I want to come in as a Yoruba man. It's by choice. I mean, it's by chance that you were there. And because you have appeared to become an Igbo man, you should not begin to face the consequences of living in a community that your neighbors just refuse to like it. I think it's important for us to say that.
Thank you so much for your response. I mean, let's move over to our second story where we've seen the Nigerian President Bola Tinubu has asked the National Assembly to approve a 21.5 billion loan for our to fund our 2025-2026 budget. Please, can you explain what the MTEF is, and this money that will be gotten from the loans, do you think that it will be spent properly? And what can Nigeria as a country do for us to get out of our borrowing hole?
Yeah, I think the MTEF, right? The MTEF for short is the Medium Term Expenditure Framework. It's a 3-year plan of government that lays out how they plan, what they plan to spend on. Not necessarily to that granular details that you get in the budget, but a framework that tells you we are planning to spend 50 billion here in this sector, 30 billion in this sector. Overall, we intend to spend 52 trillion. And this year, by next year, I mean, 2026, right? We intend to spend 53 trillion, and then on and on like that. But to arrive at that figure, two things happen. The first thing, you also have to compute your income, meaning that you take feed from the central bank, from all the revenue generating agency. You take feed, you sit down, and then you plot on the system, right? Most of those systems are prepared by consultants, paid for by foreign government. You plug in something, and then they calculate, oh, these are the estimate of potential revenue you make. And then based on that estimate, you decide how much borrowings you are going to make. Now, the shocker is this. Historically, in Nigeria, I know that for a fact. Between 2010 and 2024, when government announced their budgets, this is how much we intend to spend, and this is our revenue. At no point have we been able to raise up to that revenue. And that essentially means that the money you are projecting you want to borrow is either you don't spend what you intend to spend. So if I say, oh, I'm going to spend 4 trillion on education or to fix roads, but based on that, out of this 4 trillion, I'm going to borrow 3 trillion. Now, hypothetical, I'm using hypothetical so people don't quote me. 3 trillion, I'm going to borrow 1 trillion. At the end of the day, you don't raise 3 trillion, you end up raising maybe 1 trillion in some instances. Now you are left with 4 trillion naira hanging in the balance. That 4 trillion is either okay, if you borrow, let's assume you now over borrow, you borrow 2 trillion instead of 1 trillion, you now have 3 trillion. That 3 trillion out of 4 trillion, you end up spending the 3 trillion. And most times than not, that 3 trillion goes into paying your salaries, meeting of overhead, paying for water for government official, fueling the cars of government official, paying for electricity bill. That's even if they pay that. Flying around the country, paying extra code. That's what they use the 3 trillion for. Then the remaining 1 trillion that should go to fixing infrastructure is hanging in there. That's been the story of Nigeria's budget. Now, what you see the president asks for is just that. Remember, we plan to raise 3 trillion. Our revenue will be 3 trillion. We plan to spend 4 trillion, 1 trillion, right? That 20 something billion that the government is planning to borrow over a period of 3 years, it falls under that 1 trillion. It doesn't tell the complete story. The fear I have is this: it takes us back to the basis. You cannot, as a man, continue to overspend when you don't make. If you're a family man or you're a family woman, right? And your income this year is 100,000, right? And you say, oh, this year I plan to spend 200,000, but your income is 100,000. So yeah, I'm going to borrow the 100, and you borrowed the 100,000. So you spend 200,000, or maybe you spend 150. The next year, that 100,000 in real times, you have not grown it maybe to 120. You still go ahead and you say, no, I'm going to spend 300,000 this year, borrow money. That has been the story of Nigeria. I think we need to become extremely very disciplined in how we preserve our money. I can go deeply into the issues with why we don't raise enough revenue. There's a cost of government component to it. There's a cost of governance. I know people talk about cost of governance itself. The current expenditure is too high. But the biggest elephant in the room is the cost of government. Anytime you see a person on the street wearing uniform, collecting tax in cash for government, and putting it in his pocket. That's cost of government. Government allowed that thing to happen, and that thing does not end up in the coffers of government. When you see people stealing our crude oil, that is the cost of government. People allow it to happen. When you see revenue being stolen before it is recorded, because again, it's money that enter account that you can account for. If money does not get into the account, you cannot account for it, right? So if you steal the money before it gets into the account, nobody will tell you, and that's what you see around the country. Everybody's living large. You go to Abuja, you see a government official whose salary is less than 500,000, buying houses and buying lands in Abuja, right? In Maitama, houses of almost 2 billion naira. The question is that your salary is 500,000. If you work for 100 years, you can't hand them. How did you make the money? That is the problem. So the core issue in Nigeria, the symptom of our failed system is the corruption. And everybody looks at that corruption and say, address that corruption. If you address that corruption, you're only addressing symptomatic issues. You need to go to the core basis. And the core is ensuring that our resources are well managed. People stealing gold, mining gold, illegal, all those things, we need to put an end to it. My take here is this. Anytime you see a government official borrowing money, just know that you are the one paying for it one way or the other. It's either you pay for it in terms of inflation tax. If you look at your pocket today, everybody is facing inflation tax. Or you pay directly by missed services. That healthcare services that you should get, you won't get it. One way or the other, you are paying for it. And the reason for it is because of cost of government. The cost for allowing our government to exist is what is actually giving birth to that. So the $21 billion that they are projecting is just a tiny fraction of a bigger problem we have in our society. I don't subscribe to it. I don't believe we should be borrowing that massive amount of money. And rather, we should focus on how we actually rein in on cost of government. And then by cost of governance, the money resources we free up, we use that to fix 1, 2, 3 infrastructure. And then with that, we begin to improve. I end by saying this. Remember a few days ago, a few weeks ago, or a few months ago, we said we'll remove subsidy. Subsidy had been removed. Now, state government are washed with cash. Have you seen your road improve? Have you seen the quality of healthcare services you are getting improve? Have you seen education improve? Have you seen electricity, the quality of electricity that you are receiving improve? Look around you. The services that government provide, there are 4,000, I think there are about 3,800 of them in total. Every single one of them, maybe we could say that passport, right? Maybe issuance of passport has improved. But for, for that, we could clap for the person in charge. Aside from that, how many services of government, the quality of services being delivered and improved because of improved money? I don't think so. I think our problem is not just having money in government, and I think we have a deeper rooted problem that we need to address at the core of the conversation, and that is going back to the basics and reducing the cost of having our government and then the cost of governance itself, the process of actually making things work. With that, if we could fix those two things, and then we prioritize the people, put them at the heart of our public policy design and our decision making, definitely things will begin to improve. Until we do that, when you walk on the street and you see government officials blindly siren, you see a road being constructed without provision for children, especially children with mobility problems, adults with mobility problems. The way our streets are constructed, no road, the way our drains are constructed, the way people sell land without infrastructure. When you look at all those things, just always remember it's our government that allows such things happen. And that's the cost we bear as a people.
Okay, so our last story, we're just going to touch on Niger and Guinea a bit. So we saw Niger expel Chinese oil workers over the violation of their rules, signaling a desire for a greater control over their natural resources. Does this make a sustainable commitment to regulatory enforcement and transparency, or is it a one-off assertion of its sovereignty? And for Guinea, we also saw them canceling 129 dormant mineral permits. So what we're seeing now is they're trying to create space for new investors. Um, there's so much reactions from the Niger government, from the Guinea government. What do we think these responses are? Is it a claim for sovereignty? Will this last long, or is just a short-term effect, kind of?
I mean, I will say something that makes me laugh, and I think I've made comments on this. Of recent, if I go on TikTok, the only thing I see is the Burkina Faso military junta, the legal president of Burkina Faso. It
Yeah.
seems to have transformed Burkina Faso.
Hmm.
The kind of PR that you see around him make you think as if a new messiah has dropped in Africa, right?
Yeah.
And for people to align to that new form PR, I mean, some of us may be even guilty of falling for it, right? Everybody's life has been transformed in Burkina Faso. In fact, people are leaving the diasporas and running to Burkina Faso. The truth is that there are still massive poverty. I don't think the poverty rate in Burkina Faso had improved. It's the PR around the systems. So what you see African leaders now doing is trying to be in that PR game, right? Trying to align themselves and fall in line with those PR games. See, every year in Africa, historically, we've had instances where licenses had been revoked. If you remember Nigeria, we have a long battle with around that also. OPL, I can't remember the full name now, that was revoked. People revoke licenses if you don't meet the terms of your contract. I recall some years ago where people got licensed to build refinery. When they did not build it, another president came and revoked everything. So people do revoke and then on revoke things. They give permit. I remember in Nigeria also we gave licenses for people to mine. When they could not mine, somebody became president and then revoke it. But at that time, there were no heightened attention to that in terms of the whole wall that you build around those things. But things are a little bit different now, maybe because of the PR around the Burkina Faso issue. So we need to take this with a pinch of salt. But that said, it's important for Africa itself to put its people at the heart again, at the heart of its policy design. If you need to create job for your steaming population and then somebody sitting on a license preventing others that want to actually enter into that market to actually begin to mine and then do things that will create job and then improve and elevate the status of your people, definitely you can take action to actually eject them, right? And it's not a big deal. People do it everywhere. Everybody, you have to make decisions that will put your people at the heart of it. So I personally won't fall for that. I think let's see what happens within the next 18 months. When this license has been revoked, who gets it? Is it the government? Are you setting up a national complaint to actually power on with that? And let's see what happens in terms of who you sell those things to, and then how you use those resources to improve your people. Until I see that, I'm sorry, I don't fall for all these PR things.
That's all for today. Thank you so much, Samuel, for joining us on the podcast.
Always a pleasure to be on the program, yeah, on the podcast. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
To all our listeners, this podcast is by SBM Intelligence. You can access the podcast by searching for SBM Intelligence anywhere you find podcasts. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, like, share, and we'll definitely want to read your comments. Please drop your comments in our comment section. For deeper insights into our work, like the report we have on Biafra, you can visit our website at sbmintel.com. Remember to connect with us on all our social media platforms. You can find us on X, Facebook, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn at SBM Intelligence. Thank you for tuning into the week ahead. Join us next Friday for more updates shaping the African continent.